You are listening to The Road Ahead. Welcome back. So, was there anything that is quite, how do you say, apparent in the sense that you feel throughout your years of exploring these areas? Do you see anything that has changed quite?
Definitely. I'll give you an example of Sipadan in Malaysia. We were trying to join a famous scientist, Jack Cousteau, diving there in the early 90s.
Okay.
And when we dive Sipadan, at that time, it was really an eye-opener. It was put as the top 5 dive sites in the world.
Sipadan.
Now when I go back to Sipadan, I'm disappointed with what I see there. But for first-timers going in 2023 to Sipadan,
they will see it's beautiful.
they will see it's amazingly beautiful. But I've seen Sipadan before.
It's even more beautiful before.
It's incredibly beautiful, right? And it is a relative thing. But as you measure that, there is a scientist called Elizabeth Wood from UK who does a lot of work in Sipadan. I think if you look at her work and you compare to what Sipadan is now, then you realize that it's changed a lot.
When you say change a lot, is it because of the what they call bleaching of the corals? Is that, or do you feel that the diversity is getting less? You see certain species not there anymore.
Throughout our marine parks and diving there, whether it's Sipadan or it's Mabul or it's Terumbu Layang or Pulau Redang or even Pulau Paya, within diving there for the last 30-40 years, and looking back at what you saw then and what you see now, there's a big change in many of these areas. Even the nearest coral reef to Penang, Kendi and the Song Song group in southern Kedah, many of the fishes species that you see before there, which are indicators of a healthy, diverse ocean, are not there anymore.
It's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. Of course, you talk about the giant clam. There used to be a lot, but it's gone.
It's gone as well.
It's gone, right? It's very few. And
that's alarming.
And this year we discovered that the last stands of seagrass in the Straits of Malacca.
Seagrass. Seagrass. Okay.
Seagrass, which is in Penang. I just came back last week. There is a lot of dieback in the Straits of Penang. The seagrass are important for fish. You remember this ecosystem support a lot of secondary habitats in that particular area, which brings us to the idea of food security. Corals, apart from being beautiful, are homes to it's a food bank.
Yes.
It's a food bank, whether it's mollusks, whether it's fish, whether it's crustaceans, whether,
everyone hangs out there.
Everything requires that to survive.
Right,
Similarly with mangroves and seagrass that we mentioned, and even certain types of mud flats. To us is mud, but Perlis mud flats, for example, are super rich. And these are the suppliers of our food.
Right.
You might say, "Oh no, but I don't."
They don't see the connection.
I don't take fish.
Okay.
I'm okay with chicken or beef. But to grow chicken and beef, the food for that come from the ocean.
Right.
So you realize that you cut the feet, the whole thing will
everything
collapse.
is connected.
The whole thing will collapse, right? So, coming back to what we mentioned, as someone from Penang, who knows that, who has not only that realization in science, but also in emotion and heritage, this is alarming. Right? This is alarming.
Yeah, it's alarming because, of course, number one, we are talking about the disruption in the food chain, basically, right? The food ecosystem. But the other part is, of course, the whole idea of water. I remember talking to you in CMAX that whatever problems when it comes to pollution and all this, it disrupts the whole natural cycle of the provision of water, potable water, right? Because I think one thing that really struck me when I was in CMAX was that without all this pollution, we have enough water to drink. So we don't really need to save water because water is always there. It's in abundance because of the natural cycle of evaporation, precipitation. But if you cut, if you disrupt that cycle, this is when what we have now when it comes to scarcity of water, potable water. So perhaps we can say that one of the biggest issues is actually industrial pollution, right? This is what actually disrupts everything.
Well, it's a multifaceted problem with the issue of water security in Penang, and of course in Malaysia, and it is such an important resource, right? It's life or death.
Yes,
right?
Very much.
So I think I quote in Penang Monthly saying that you can live without love, but you cannot live without water.
Without water.
So answering that question, we have a few options. But these options must be talked about, must be explored,
right?
For us to reduce our supply and our sustenance in water security. There are things on the policy and the administrative side that we have to solve. There are things on the education side we have to solve, and on the science side. If you look at, for example, on the policy side, it makes sense to follow the approaches of certain other countries that water should be under one administration, right? You cannot have agriculture, which takes about half the water from the Muda River, be in charge of water for agriculture.
I think more than half, right?
Or more than half. PBA, which supplies our water for drinking from the same river under a different management. And then Indah Water, who's in charge of pembentungan, sanitation and reuse and so on, to be another agency.
There's no
but we're talking about one body of water.
One body of water, yeah. There should be coordination into one large entity.
Or there should be one department.
Single entity, right.
So then, every drop of water is taken into consideration, right? If not, then we push responsibilities around,
right?
Or we are blindsided by certain use and extraction of water, right? And we see we don't have enough water. Right. So how do the public improve in their water security? Gets improve in their water security.
Yeah, I think that's also on I guess on the, shall I say, the arrangement, the whole governance of it, right? But I think more than that, as you said, on the scientific side, on perhaps coming up with ways to regulate industrial pollution, for
Right.
example, the industries.
Right.
I think this is the main issue here, right?
Right.
Because without that, the source of the problem is
Right. Some are quite simple to
Yeah.
to introduce. For example, there is a lot of housing estates, and these areas, like everyone else, uses a lot of water, right? When you build a housing estate, individual houses, why don't you pre-install collection of rainwater for each house? The roof collects the water, it goes into a container that can be used.
Right.
Grey water from the whole housing estate can be returned to whatever that you want to use it for.
Right.
Okay, it immediately reduces the total use of water, and we need to tell the developers or make it even a policy that each one has to introduce this already. For example, in some places like Kulim, for example, they introduce this and people are grateful for that because they have rainwater. You buy a house, there is a water collection area for that house.
Okay. It's part of the house
development,
design.
design.
Okay.
It's not difficult. But when we complain about not enough water, when we complain about the rise in tariff, we should ourselves look into measures on how to collect water.
Talking about price, I was in a session yesterday about this. Actually, it's about foreign investment and growth. But somehow the conversation went into water.
Yes.
And I think one of the issues also is because the price of water in Penang is so cheap.
Yes.
So it creates a moral hazard.
Yes.
Where people, because it's so cheap, people don't care how much they can use. They just mandi 1 jam, 1 hour, whatever, right? Because it's so cheap.
Yeah.
But in places like Johor, for example, they would say that it's one of the most, it's a sensitive word, but it's not. It's quite pricey.
Yes.
And it helps because people don't use that much. So price is also very important. But of course, we need to see how we can balance this thing. I think the government is looking at this. The state government is looking at this.
But it's always a contentious.
It is very much.
Issue.
Yeah.
Because how cheap it is, people compare it to the new price, not to other places.
Yes.
And you say, well, the price of water has increased.
Yeah.
That is right. But I think issues like Penang Monthly this month, talking about water security, explains why there is a need to increase, like you mentioned, in price of Penang water. Penang and Terengganu are the cheapest areas.
Penang and Terengganu. Okay.
But if we were to be charged the price of water like in Singapore, then we will cut our shower short.
Okay.
Of course you're right, but there is an element of education that we have missed
as well. Yeah.
And we think we do not think how profound this is. For example, if when 30, 40 years ago in schools we were taught to wash our hands before you eat. Everybody must wash their hands before they eat. Now, if you say that to the schools here, people think you are insane because everybody washes their hand before they eat. It has become a norm.
Right.
You don't have to say. But 30 years ago, we had to say this. So over that period, you imagine if we have taught our children to save water. Right? Or to
it must be ingrained in education.
It must be ingrained.
Actually, something really profound happened when I visited CIMEX.
Yes.
After CIMEX, it actually changed a lot of my how I use water. Actually, I become more conscious.
Yes.
So
even brushing your teeth in the morning.
Yeah, even such a short intervention for 3 days in CIMEX, it actually has a profound impact on what
Yes.
how I look at it.
Yes.
So I think you're right. Education is definitely very important.
Very important. Right.
And it can be done.
Yeah.
It's less costly than putting on fines or whatever,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So
And we cannot continue. For example, now there's climate change. Because you come
Yes.
to that. Now there's climate change. The insufficiency of our water supply is going to affect our food security.
yes, very much.
One of our staple food is rice, and rice is water intensive.
Yes, very much.
Right. Without water, how do you grow rice?
Actually, this is the problem. I feel it's like how do I say? Agriculture is one of the biggest consumption of has a huge consumption of water. You say rice takes a lot of water.
Yes.
Avocado, huge amount of water needed.
Yes.
I mean,
And not only will we have not enough supply of fresh water, the existing fresh water will be impacted by sea level rise.
Yes, because
So
then
as the sea
the
rises,
salt water comes in.
Salts come in, and fresh water becomes salty, and you cannot use that.
Yes, I mean you will destroy the whole paddy field.
That's it. So in anticipation, we'll talk about this in a while when we talk about climate change. In anticipation, what do we do now?
Right.
How are we going to be resilient and reduce risks? Right? And it cannot be done overnight.
Yes.
We need time.
I guess there needs to be more studies on how we can have more resilient crops.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Towards all this.
definitely.
Yeah.
And
Do you think these studies are taking place
there are
around
studies
Asia?
taking place, and what you mentioned just now is that with all these negative things that are discussed, there are solutions to that. The scientists have been working on that solution for quite a while now.
Okay.
But we need to translate that into policy and scale it up, and then provide options on security.
True.
Right.
I think technology must, if I can say this, technology in agriculture must go into that road where you reduce water usage in a big way.
Yes.
Because I think that's the main thing for agriculture.
Right.
Because and also the problem also is because we are now looking at industrial scale production. Everything must be industrial scale,
Yes.
send out
Yeah.
for exports,
Right.
and it's taking a lot of
Right.
massive water
Right.
consumption. This
We-
has
we-
to stop.
we
This
need-
has
we-
to see. We have to see how we can regulate this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also need to look at food security as a whole.
Mm.
So, for example, in Penang, space is an issue. So one of the biggest cost of reduction in food growing areas, paddy and so on, is housing development. Right? We need to relook at this. And we need to relook at cost of growing paddy and what are the bottlenecks in their processes, and address this. We need to provide, for example, sufficient knowledge base and also alternatives for going forward and looking at new crops, right? Department of Agriculture has to look at this. Penang is so proud that we per acre we are the highest producers of paddy in the country, right?
Okay.
Kedah is lower, and Perak is lower. But do we buy paddy only from Penang? Where does your rice come from? It comes from everywhere, even from Thailand.
Yes.
Right? So, yes, there is a good example in Penang, but the concern is on a larger scale. Right? Its concern is on a larger scale.
Yes. Nationwide scale.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this has to be one of the issues that policymakers need to worry about, actually. Food security and how to feed the next generation,
Yes,
right? I mean,
yes,
this is very,
food,
very important.
yeah.
Okay. Now let's leave Penang and go to the global stage. Because I want to tap your views about how climate change has profound political implications, and I think this is an issue. For example, as you know, there's the warming of the Arctic seas, and Russia's new strategic advantages coming from that, such as unearthing new minerals, the clearing of the Arctic Passage for global trade, which is of course the talk of town now, because obviously when the warming of the seas in the Arctic seas, it provides a shorter route for global trade from Asia to the West, much more than what we have in the Straits of Malacca, which is traditionally our main, shall I say, bread and butter lah, put it that way.
Yes.
But what do you make of these developments? And do you think we are obviously Russia is a big power, and a strong Russia would definitely ruffle a lot of feathers, especially as you know in the US and all this. So do you think we are heading for a Titanic, an iceberg,
Right.
in the future?
Okay. Okay. I would put this in some sort of perspective. It'll be a while before Russia is able to do that, I think. But we are also concerned with the transfer of goods across the Isthmus of Kra.
Yes.
The development in southern Thailand.
Yeah.
Which is at the entrance of the Straits of Malacca.
Yep.
Right. I think Singapore should also be very worried
very
about
much.
this.
Yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Singapore has been trying to stop it for some time.
Yes. But I think that will develop. But in the immediate term, although these things will come, and we have to think about it, no doubt, we also have our plates quite full. And issues with, for example, now, if you look at, if you talk about the number of flash floods in Kuala Lumpur, for example, not long, maybe 5 years ago compared to now,
It's more frequent.
It's more frequent. The number of adverse weather events.
You saw the news in Valencia in Spain.
In Spain, of course,
That's
and
crazy.
In Baling.
Yes.
Right, in Baling, closer to home.
Closer to home, yeah.
Yeah. Recently in our coastal areas, there was a worry, but this is immediate. This is immediate. It's going to happen soon.
So you're saying that not forget, but put these larger things aside. At our own home, we have problems that we need to
so
solve.
we have to look at all this. I don't say put aside. Look at all this, and we had to put this list in an order of prioritization.
Yeah.
And what can we do as a nation in Malaysia? We have to prepare for its coming, of course, as you mentioned, but within our
backyard,
our home,
we need to get our house in order.
we get to have our house in order. And what do we do first? And we are not alone. We have common problems with Thailand and Indonesia and the Philippines. You mentioned ASEAN.
Right.
So some of these issues can be done on our scale.
Right.
And looking forward, let's say even in the next 10 years, what can be achieved at this level? I think what the Prime Minister's message in Laos recently was very apt, saying that when interviewed by CNN, he says that yes, we have problems with our neighbours regarding borders, regarding many issues, but the big difference between us and US is that we don't go to war. Resolve these issues diplomatically. Look
It's
at
the
how
ASEAN DNA.
this is ASEAN DNA. Let's talk about it.
Yes,
How
let's
can
talk
we
about it,
improve? So I think this spirit is important. Is important. Not only in the issues that we have encountered so far, but also in climate change. In climate change, the rising sea level and salinization of coastal waters and its impact on paddy growing areas is faced by Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia. We all have the same problem.
Yeah, I think the interconnectedness is so obvious, right?
It's obvious. It's obvious.
And I think if I can say, perhaps ASEAN, even though is not the most integrated politically compared to, of course, like the European Union, but I think we've so far had a lot of success in making sure that we cooperate, you know, as independent nations.
Right. Right.
I think this thing about, because I want to also ask you this concept of, you know, this whole mindset in policymakers that we share a shared earth. I don't think a lot of politicians, I mean, leaders out there have the same mindset, right? And that's why we have wars, we have divisions and all this.
Right.
What do you think we can do, like to inculcate this kind of mindset with leaders? You know, let's probably start with ASEAN first, maybe.
Right. I think, you know, on the ASEAN stage, and with Anwar Ibrahim holding a key position, the leadership in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
We should set up in motion these common issues of climate.
Right.
We need to talk about climate on this scale. Singapore is very advanced in it, for example, climate projection.
Yes.
And if you look at some solutions that's been implemented in other countries, the Scandinavian countries is a good example. We are not rich enough or prosperous enough, or we are not a developed nation where some of those can be applied to the Malaysian or ASEAN context. But we do have traditional ways of handling climate. For example, our houses were built on stilts well before anyone was.
Right.
And rising sea level is something that maybe we can handle, right? But there must be a willingness to look at this problem and to solve this problem.
Right.
If you are talking about the population, the people itself, this problem and these issues has to be looked at in not only in the immediate scale, 3 or 4 years, but in the intermediate and long scale, long time frame. So if you understand that, then we can have, I think, some solutions implemented.
Okay.
But where do we do this? I think Penang Institute is a very good platform to be able to bring forth this discussion and say that, look, we have to look at this in 10 years' time. We have to look at this in 25 years' time. Doesn't matter who is the leadership of the country, but climate is going to be here.
Right.
And these are some of the things that we should look at, and these are some of the solutions we should implement, and these are the ways we should not go. For example, the Middle Bank Marine Sanctuary is a climate resilient
project
for Penang. And the longer you leave it, the more expensive it is going to be.
Right.
So let's do it now.
Right.
Let's look at some of these areas where there are richness in biodiversity in Penang, where you can protect
and double down on it
and create fisheries.
Right.
Artificial reefs in water, protected by our marine park or our national park in Penang. It's a good idea to improve the resources in the sea. Right, so implement this project.
Right.
The Southern Island reclamation, for example. People look at it as a negative thing. It's going to harm fisheries. But I would say, do the project properly. By the end of the project, it should improve the seas.
Right.
There are ways on how we can implement this to improve the oceans and its fisheries and its resources.
Okay.
Look at the needs of the fishermen, because wherever we live, we depend on the sea.
Right.
For our survival. So these are the I think the responsibility of a think tank, to tease out the problems, because and we have the networking with important people and important scientists to draw out some of the solutions from them through the platform of a think tank.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Wow, interesting. I think that's all we have for today, Prof. Zul. I think we've had a great conversation and we've covered a lot of topics. I really thank you so much for taking the time to be with us for this conversation.
Thank you.
So, to know more about Penang Institute and its works, you can go to www.penanginstitute.org. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.